Should you come out as on the spectrum? Stick around to find out. Hi friends, my name is Claire and this is my channel. What's your theory? Here, I make content about what it is like to live as an adult on the autism spectrum and whatever else feels good to me. So if that sounds good to you, or if you're feeling particularly gracious today, and I hope that you are, please go ahead and click the subscribe button, ring the bell. I almost forgot to mention that I put out videos 3 times a week. Click the like, it really helps me. Thank you so much for your support. But seriously, I would consider clicking the like as a way to help me get paid, so I appreciate it. I've had several people reach out to me recently about my coming out story, about my experience coming out to people on the spectrum. And I have made some videos about my experience of learning I was on the spectrum and even telling people somewhat about being on the spectrum, but I believe that what the people were asking for is a video on how to come out as on the spectrum. Should you do it? Is it a good idea to disclose or not to disclose? That is the question. As usual, with everything that we talk about here, that is a super loaded and difficult question. And the short answer of should you? I don't know. I don't know you. There's a lot to consider. So I guess we could go over some of the things to consider, and then just want to say I am not a doctor. I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm just giving you my thoughts as an autistic person who was diagnosed later in life and has publicly come out as autistic. So take it, leave it. Maybe it's helpful, maybe it's not. I don't know. But some of you asked for it, so here are my thoughts. Coming out as on the autism spectrum is a completely different situation for everybody, and there's a lot to consider. So after giving it some thought, I was thinking that there are different groups of people that you need to consider, and then also different timelines that you need to consider. So I thought I'd go over a few of those. As far as groups of people, of course, the first group that you're going to think about is your family. Coming out to your family can be difficult because they are either going to be very accepting of you, or they feel that they can't be accepting of you at all, or they won't be accepting of you because they know you and they would have known that you were on the spectrum. So even if they're uninformed about what it means to be on the spectrum, even if in reality they're wrong, they're going to think that they're right and not accept that you're on the autism spectrum. And that can be very difficult. So that's definitely something to think about. There's going to be family members who are super supportive, super understanding, or at least want to understand and see where you're coming from. But there may be family members who say, no, you're not on the spectrum. Stop it with this spectrum stuff. You know, your problems are what everybody else has. Ignorant things like that. So that is something to consider, because we can't stop everyone's responses. We can only educate, and hopefully people will be accepting of us. But in my opinion, it is super sad if you've got family members who are like that. But do you really need family members like that if that's how they're going to be? Hopefully you've got other family members who are more supportive, but just something to think about. Family can actually be more of a mixed bag than you'd think. Another group of people that you'd have to think about is your friends. Close friends are a great place to start when you're thinking about sharing that you're on the spectrum with people. And if you have been diagnosed, those are probably some of the first people that you talk to about what you were going through. And this can be a great outlet to start letting people know that you're on the spectrum. However, just because they're your close friends doesn't necessarily mean, again, that they'll be accepting of your diagnosis, similar to your family thinking, oh, well, I know this person super well. I know if they were on the spectrum. So there's always going to be that dynamic, no matter who you're disclosing to. Kind of a bummer, but there we are. There's also a high probability that if your friends are accepting, they're probably going to say the wrong thing to make you feel better. Just give them a little bit of grace. Not every day do you hear that your friend that you've known is on the spectrum, and people just don't know what to say. They usually say the first things that come to their mind, and they're usually the things you shouldn't say to somebody who's on the spectrum, like, well, you're super high functioning, or I wouldn't have known, or other things like that that aren't very helpful. So another group to consider, other than your family, is definitely your friends. Took me a while to think about the next group because it's not something that I'm currently involved in, but I don't know why I didn't think of it because I spent so many years in school. But should you disclose that you're on the spectrum if you're in school? I think that this is the one place where maybe it's super important to disclose that you're on the spectrum, mostly because it's the place that I struggled the most prior to my diagnosis. And also so many universities, obviously, elementary and high school education, there's a lot of help for people who are on the spectrum. But in university, college, master's programs, there is plenty of support for people who are on the spectrum who might need some extra time on their tests or other accommodations that could really help them. I think that school is the one place where I'm thinking, yeah, go ahead and disclose. The worst thing that could happen is you get an ignorant person who doesn't want to help you and you could just report them. So I guess my thoughts on that are, if you are going to disclose your autism to people, you just need to be in a place where you're not taking it. It's hard not to say not taking it too personally, but you do have to be in a place where you can't care as much about what other people think. It's your truth. So if somebody is hostile towards your truth, it's not your business. You can just keep living your life in your own direction. The next group I was thinking you'd have to consider would be the workplace. Not everyone on the spectrum has a job. Not everyone on the spectrum can have a job. But a lot of people who are diagnosed later in life push through all of that and get a job anyway because they don't know that they're on the spectrum and they don't know that what they're doing isn't working for them. Or they can work. That's not a bigger issue for them. However, disclosing at work can be an issue. It shouldn't be, because there are meant to be accommodations for people, and you should be able to go to your HR department and talk about accommodations. I'd say if you are getting accommodations from the get-go, that makes it a lot easier. Like if you're starting a new job, then it's great to disclose because new environment, people from the get-go are looking at you as you are, as the autistic person you are. But if you're disclosing an autism diagnosis in the middle of working at a place, they may already have preconceived notions about who you are and what you can accomplish, and then think that maybe you don't need those accommodations because you've been fine up until now. Why do you need to change? That's hard. I mean, I'm not saying I have a solution to this. I'm just telling you that this is what it could be like, and it's something to consider. However, you are entitled to, within reason, some accommodations for your diagnosis. So it's hard to say. I don't know. I don't know the answer. This is a hard topic. Disclose at work or not? I guess you just have to know if it was right. When I was working, I did disclose. At the time, I didn't know that I maybe needed some changes in my work lifestyle. So I can't personally speak to like, can things change if there's a diagnosis? Because when I disclosed, things did not change. But I don't know that that's true everywhere. And now that I know more about my diagnosis, I would have advocated for myself in a different way. So is it anyone's fault that I didn't get those changes? No, I don't think so. I didn't know, they didn't know. It's a learning process. The final group I was thinking about is just publicly declaring that you're autistic, which is what I did when I made a YouTube channel. This, again, really hard to call. It's in general been a really positive experience for me, and I am so happy that I did it, but it took a long time to get to a place where I was okay with being that open, and it was really difficult for me at first to be super open about my diagnosis. It, in general, as I mentioned, has been super positive for me. But I also know that this has not been the case for everyone on this platform or other platforms on the internet. I know that there's been a lot of negative backlash for some of my fellow YouTubers, autistic social media people. So that's hard to say as well. Then I was thinking about timing and how timing plays into should you disclose. The first one I was thinking about is you could go right in for the disclosure. Like as soon as you meet somebody, let them know. That doesn't always seem like the best case scenario because sometimes is it pertinent? Not sure. Other times it could be the best case scenario because you're just letting them know who you are right off the bat, but you don't know how they feel about people who are on the spectrum, if they're accepting of that or if they understand it. So that can be difficult. So you have to think about if that's the right decision. Then there's waiting to tell somebody, which can also be hard because when is the right time to tell them? Will they think that you were keeping something from them, or are you just waiting until it's pertinent for them to know? Like, I feel like that would be my preference. I don't always need to talk about my diagnosis with everybody that I meet. And then the other option, as far as timing, is deciding not to disclose at all. I'm not talking about lying or withholding the information, but if it doesn't come up and you don't feel like it's pertinent to the situation, I don't know that I see any negative or positive to disclosing that about yourself for no reason, especially if it doesn't pertain to the situation or doesn't affect the situation. I don't know that it's important to disclose. So as you can see, I don't have an answer for this topic. I just have some thoughts to disclose or not to disclose. Personally, it's been a super positive experience. But what I really want to focus on here is that the important thing is that it should be for your benefit and for your comfort. It is your information, and you need to feel good about disclosing your autism to people. You need to feel comfortable and know that it's a right move for you. Don't feel pressured into telling someone because you feel like you owe it to them or whatever. You need to be in a place where you want to tell them and it's a healthy thing for you. That's the most important thing. I can't give you advice on should you or shouldn't you, because every instance is so different. And I know that I've been very blessed at how people have responded, but I know that there are some instances where it might not be safe to disclose, or maybe you know that the person's not going to respond well. There's so many factors. So yeah, there's no black and white answer. It's just there can't be for something like this. If you're not comfortable with that shift in dynamic yet, then you shouldn't feel any pressure to disclose. This is not other people's thing, it is your thing. So do what you feel is right, and that will probably be the right thing. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Obviously, this is a huge issue, and I don't know that I'm totally equipped to be the voice on it. I'm just trying to start a conversation. So why don't you, in the comments, let us know what your experience has been, what you would recommend to other people. We'd love to hear it.